Hey, look at this beauty. This is a titanium gravel bike from Litespeed Appalachian. If you ever seen one of these around in your neck of the woods, you're definitely going to have a head turner situation. Whoop, like whiplash. Let's review this particular Litespeed titanium cross bike. What's a cross bike? Hey, welcome back to This Old Bike. Hey, I'm Justin from Anoa Guy Bicycles, and this is my classic channel featuring classic bikes. We're going to do a review of this particular Litespeed Appalachian gravel weight cross. We're going to do some explanation of what this bike is and what is considered it to be today's standard of bikes and how it fits into the realm of cycling of all things. So Litespeed titanium is probably one of those buzzwords, or you've heard about it within the cycling industry. It's been around for several decades. This bike, yes, for sure. It's been around for several decades, but the company itself has been around for, a good long time. And they primarily make titanium bikes. Although they did dabble into a little bit of aluminum carbon over the years, but they are still a relevant company today, and they're still producing bikes for more of a, I would say, close to more of a mass production, but not mass production quantities. In any case, titanium has been around for a long time in the cycling realm, and various other brands have used titanium in their actual mix, like Gary Fisher, Bontrager, Le Mans, just to name a few. There's specific companies out there that only do titanium, like Dean, Litespeed, and various other companies that are just up a high-end, top of the line. Also, guess what? Lynskey. Lynskey is actually a part of the Litespeed family back in the day. He broke off, they got a little divorce apparently, and he has his own line, Lynskey Bikes. Unfortunately, a few months back, Lynskey passed away, but his bike line still carries on. All right, what makes it a cross bike? You've never heard the term cross bike. It's not a hybrid. It's actually a bike that was designed for a specific sport, cyclocross racing. Cyclocross racing it's been around for over 100 years, and if you haven't seen one in your neck of the woods, they're a pretty fun sport to watch because it's a loop track type race. Reason being, it's based on the time, and it's kind of an obstacle course. Why is it an obstacle course for riding a bike? They're making them get off the bike and run around. Is this some kind of a clown event? No, actually it was a safety event for crazy cyclists back in the day. So road season would actually taper off or go into the later season, and it actually would get cold in certain areas. Well, as a competitive, aggressive, a lot of individuals, probably still on a little cocaine back then, was racing late in the season and didn't care about the cold. All of a sudden, they were losing fingers and toes, which the race coordinators were like, this is not a good thing. So we probably need to add a mix to this. Well, what they came up with is basically get them off their bike, run a section, warm back up, and get back on the bike and ride. Because everybody's been riding a bike and it gets cold, that wind chill is a real, and before you know it, is very painful too. Well, that became a sport in itself, and it's actually a beloved sport between roadies and mountain gals, because it's kind of a mix between, and for end of the season, it's a fun event for both race cultures to get together and just bash it out. And also it gives opportunity for those who didn't do well on the road or the mountain, sometimes can excel just in the cyclocross sport in itself. In any case, it has its own championships. It goes through the wintertime months, and it's great to just see, watch, and it is a spectator sport because you can show up and see these guys go for 30 minutes or so, smashing it out. And most cyclocross racers love it when the conditions are the worst. Mud, ice, snow, you got it. They don't want some dainty conditions. They're just out for the big bash, and it's fun for them. Well, what bike companies have done over the millennium is actually made a cross bike. One of my favorite bikes, by the way. Why is it one of my favorite bikes? Because, I like to ride on the roads, but I like to be able to jump off when I need to and not get ran over by a dumb car. There gave me an opportunity to do some riding, commuting, or what have you back in the 80s and the 90s on more of a versatile bike. And I'm not too worried about speed back then because I was more into mountain biking. That was my speed bike. And today I do have a road bike, but I'm old, I'm slow, it don't matter, and plus I got a little extra weight anyway. So when you're looking at that particular bike, a cross bike, it was very versatile, but unfortunately, bike companies only made 1 or 2 models at best, sometimes just a frame, and you had to collage piece it together. And even though there was a race circuit, but it was really just a small market. Well, looking at this particular bike, a little bit of history of cross. Well, the cross has like your brake bosses for mountain, but you have the road geometry positioning for cranksets and so forth. And then you have other couple details that are very interesting. Cable routing was on the top, so you can actually grab the bike from underneath, which is kind of cool if you're needing to chuck it up. You ever seen a transition? Is really cool when they ride up to a section and they pop the bike up and put it on their shoulder and jump over the obstacle. So that's a part there. The geometry a little bit higher lift on the bottom bracket, so you're not hitting those obstacles with the crankset. More of a mountainish design, but you have the brakes as cantilevers versus the road because all got all the ice and gunk and everything building up. You want to be able to stop, right? So there's that. Typically, it was a road drop bar position just for skinniness and trying to go fast. It's all about speed in this particular event. Reason being, you're timed. It's all about how many laps you can do within that one period segment of time. And most laps is the winner. So a particular bike is not a great road, it's not a great mountain, but it's a great compromise. Well, fast forward to about, say about a decade ago, somebody had a brilliant idea of like, hey, let's make a bike that's a little more versatile, not a touring bike, not a cross bike. We'll call it the gravel bike. Well, the gravel bike was born when disc brakes were actually integrated into road bikes. So the first variation of sanctioned cross bikes with disc brakes were around 2008. That kind of opened the door to this new brand of bike. Also, marketing department just got drooling their teeth like we got something new because it's been kind of stagnant for a while and trying to find some new niche to get into. Well, the gravel bike, a little bit wider tires, a little more comfortable ride, more versatile for doing road and dirt and that kind of thing. And also with the through axle disc brakes, you can switch out wheels for your road wheel set to a gravel wheel set. That kind of aged this bike out a little bit. But it's still relevant today. Why is that? Well, it's still gravel-ish. You can probably get 35 to 40C tires on there. Pretty comfortable. And this one's a titanium. Look up a brand new titanium gravel bike and you'd be like, ooh, that's a little out of my price range. These bad boys, if you can find one, is a titanium, which is pretty cool material, and also is cross, which you can convert it to more of a recreational gravel bike-ish, which is what it is already anyway, and have a stellar bike, hopefully within that 1,000 to 1,500. Talking about new ones, you're talking about 3 to 5. But in any case, yeah, it doesn't have the disc brakes, although if you have a local titanium welder, they can convert the back to a through axle disc brake system if you want to go that route. Another thing to keep in mind, this one has a 1-inch head tube, so that means you're very limited on forks. This one's stuck with the aluminum until maybe we find a carbon. So that's another little gold nugget on these guys, because if it's a 1-inch on these Appalachians, they were about a 3-year, 2-year period where there was a fork manufacturer that did make carbon 1-inch thread with brake bosses from Performance Bike, by the way, but they are very far and few between, and they're kind of a unicorn in itself, just like the frame. So if you just find the frame, you're going to be kind of limited. Although, if you decide to go to disc, there's a little more disc options available for a carbon fork with disc mounts with a 1-inch. They're still around, but you don't have very many choices to pick from. So that is a limitation on the headset portion of it. But other than that, though, the rest of the frame has a versatility to it. The brake systems they've come out with the cantilever designs, they came out some really nice ones before they went all to disc, and they still are manufacturing those today. So you can get brake sets on this that actually perform really well. And then again, wheel sets are going to be the rim brake wheels like this here. Road size, so you don't have to worry about different hubs for like a hybrid bike or so forth when it's 135 versus a 130 width on the bottom on the rear triangle. So in any case, it is very versatile. What is this bike doing in my stand? Well, it is for a customer. I'm going to do some adjustment bits on it with a different stem and bar, and also seat posts, because this one's a little bit too short for them. And then we're going to put it together with Ultegra componentry, which it came with, wax chain. I just finished detailing it, as well as a ceramic coating. So it's had 2 stacks of ceramic coating, and it's about done curing and is ready to be assembled. So stringing it up with cables and housing, then basically reinstalling the componentry with the new fitting bits and wrapping the bars. It should be one excellent solid ride for this individuals. But we're going to talk about the cabling and stringing it up. We'll jump into that here in a minute and get the parts all cleaned up and ready to go, and let's get this bike reassembled and back for hellacious more riding. Appalachian Litespeed. Gotta love it. So we got the wheels on the 40C width on number 4. So we got plenty of clearance on the front fork. Those XT calipers are fantastic, cleaned up and lubed and ready to go. They have great actuation still to them. School shifters here, they came back to life. They shift pretty clean. They've been ultrasonic cleaned out and re-lubed with Triflow Superior Lube. So we got the new stem and Ritchie bars. He needed a 42 width, and we wanted a little higher up because traditionally your cross bike is a little further up and instead of down as your road, kind of more of a mountain positioning a little bit. Found us some beautiful pewter, actually the stainless steel bottle cages to match. And this is the Ultegra group I mentioned before. We got a triple up front with a wax chain, Ultegra front derailleur triple, as well as a rear 9-speed back on there. Also, what's cool about these, it came with Ultegra hubs with the classic Mavic Open Pro rims. These were very traditional for the late 90s, early 2000s, custom builds, very solid. And the back tire, these do go up to 40 with pretty decent clearance. I don't know if I want to go any further than 40 because you'll start getting some rubbage against the frame. I mean, it's pretty close as it is as a 40 on that bottom asymmetrical chainstay. And also, if you're doing a triple, you got to be mindful of the clearance of that tire too. So 40s were a good call on this. I don't think 45s would be an option unless you went to a 1x. Even then, you might be compromised on the spacing there, asymmetrical there. So there we have it. With the parts installed, derailleur hanger is aligned. Wheels are true. Also a wax ceramic coating on all the parts, in addition to a ceramic coating to the frame, which makes it water bead and clean a lot easier. So if you get a lot of mud in this area here, it'll rinse off and drop off a little bit easier. Also, that ceramic coating has a UV protection. It'll save the decal coloring a little bit. Also, this wonderful intact head badge. I mean, that is pretty immaculate for a bike of this age, 25 years, having a head badge that clean. And we're adding some decent bits. I do have a longer seat post for them, which is a race face. I believe it's the right size. This guy here has an interesting mount. We'll see if this works for him. If not, I have just a standard alloy seat. And we're going to top it off with cables and housing. We'll talk about the cables and housing after I string it up. So here we have the magnificent Litespeed Appalachian. Yeah, named after Appalachian Mountains, I'm presuming. In any case, a full titanium bike like this pretty awesome ride, especially being a, well, gravel-ish, more, it's a cyclocross bike that is a gravel bike. But with the combinations with the cable routing to be able to do the cyclocross racing, this cat might decide to do something like that with this particular bike. Well, what happened with the cables and housing? Perfectly aligned. Everything worked well with the actual stainless steel cables, derailleurs, and brakes with Jagwire housing, which is aligned with Teflon, or actually grease within the shifters. So it actually helps it shift a little bit smoother, be more accurate and dead on. This componentry, once all cleaned up, click, 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 click. It is just spot on. With addition to with the XT cantilever brakes, old cannies still hold up pretty well for a bike like this. He's not, I don't believe, going to get into super mucky muck. If he does do that kind of riding, we can always elevate those cantilever brakes to a different style or a different brand, which is a little more leverage. But as it sits, it is pretty awesome. The ones that he wants is a carbon fork, which is limited because it is a threaded 1-inch steer tube. Not necessarily threaded, but the 1-inch is definitely the problem with the situation on this one. They only made those particular forks for a couple of years at a carbon, I believe, performance bike made a brand for Forte or whatever it was. But in any case, it's pretty solid bike, and with new rubber, 40C is the widest we can get on this because the rear chainstays is where it's really kind of tight and prevents the tire. Well, this has ample clearance as a 40, but if you want a little bit like a 42, you'd be rubbing up, possibly, especially if you want to have clearance for contaminants to go through that drivetrain. You don't want to mess up your front derailleur or cause scarring to that titanium in the back. So with the new bar tape, cables and housing, he has a new saddle. Switched it out to a race face seat-post. The other one was a Shimano 600 old school classic road seat post. Not long enough for the guy, not long enough for a lot of people. It's pretty short, but this particular bike is pretty awesome. So in any case, hopefully we'll get a little interview with him and see what he thinks about the bike. He has a Litespeed road bike he's had for several decades. Loves it, and he's been looking for a second bike. Believe it or not, he does not have a second bike. That Litespeed is his primary. I do have a couple of videos with him in it in my library, and check out his story and so forth. But awesome bike, going to an awesome customer, and hopefully get a lot of awesome riding more in the off season. Gives him a little more versatility for off-road, dirt, gravel riding when the opportunity presents itself. And those mucky muck days when the bike paths are not that clean and it's kind of questionable to ride your road bike, but a gravel bike or a cross bike like this is just perfect for those kinds of conditions. But in any case, well, thanks for hanging out with me in the garage. You will find additional information in the description. If you have a bike like this or similar and you just love it, either it's a gravel, titanium, whatever the case may be, or even the older 600, not 600, Ultegra componentry that's 9-speed with a triple, hey, comment below, share your stories. This is a community. Thanks for hanging out with me in the garage. Until next time, if it's beautiful in your neck of the woods, please go for a ride. Until next time, from the garage.